You want to share? I have this all queued up. What happened to it? That's a story of my life. Okay. You know what I'm looking for, Corey, is the timeline. Did you send that out with?
Oh, the work plan?
Yeah.
It's in
It's at
the
bottom of the
packet.
agenda.
Yeah, it's in the agenda packet.
Did you pull it up for the hour now? Okay, I'm calling the meeting to order. And I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. I think we're a quorum.
Is Brian?
Yeah, it's, yeah. You're going home first, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he wasn't there when I left too.
Oh, so maybe.
He made it home.
Yeah, I think he's a Vulcan, right?
Ah.
So we had some meeting minutes. So is there anyone who would like to move the meeting minutes from the last meeting?
I moved to.
So,
What about the agenda?
oh. Are there any objections to the agenda? Additions?
Nope.
Throw them in if you. We'll have.
November.
And then the minutes from the last meeting. Any objection to accepting them?
No,
Here that we have. Okay, and then Brian will do that.
I think you should do the other things too.
Yeah, I think he takes the whole.
Okay, we can go home.
Yeah.
Oops, he didn't.
So the first thing we wanted to do, and it was actually something that
We need this up right now.
yeah, I want to talk about this right now. So we actually was Jessica who wanted us to look again at what we had said we were going to do and when we said we were going to do it. So this is kind of a surprise. We're kind of on time. We were sort of aggressive with what we started with. That we said what we would do is in the beginning that we were really working on 3 things. We were working on outreach and communications. We were going to work on looking at what other cities were doing, and then we were going to write a report. And really, we've sort of done some of those things. So I'm looking at the one on the bottom. Can you do the one on the bottom? Make that one bigger. Yes. So really what we said we were going to do was review other cities' plans, and we've done that sort of on an individual basis and as various parts of each group needed to do that. One of the things that we said was we were going to identify the top goals, and I think they came out to be, I think they were like everybody else's: electrify everything and fix our buildings. But we would have something a little perhaps more fulsome. But that's essentially what I heard us saying our goals were in terms of where we wanted to be. And then we developed an outreach plan, and Tamara and her team really did an extraordinary job, I think, of developing the survey. We have a few things, and there were brochures at various meetings that we sent out. We have QR codes that people were using. We have a few posters that we can put out for the next month that just gets people to sign up for the notify me and to take the survey, try and get those out. So that's a piece. All of that has been doing an extraordinary job, I think. We did outreach to the council and the boards and commissions. There's some question about whether we need to circle back, and I'd like to sort of put that out there. We need to sort of circle back to those folks, just tell them what we've done and how far we've gotten and where we're struggling and what role we think they need to play in this. Because some of those people, it turns out, we're not going to be able to do a comparison with every single piece of the various documents that the city has. But the tree board, for example, may be able to give us input on some of where there are issues that are overlapping in the planning commission. Give them an assignment as opposed to us having to drive. The King County emissions study has been kind of hard to figure out. I think we gotta look at that, what it was. I think it's everything we need, and it's, but when we come back around and want to do what I think of as a report card, we'll probably need really specific things. Like, a report card on gas, use of gas, whatever's, we'll know there's, turns out 75% of the people in Lake Forest Park have on gas in one year. That's a big number.
I mean, their houses.
Their houses, their cooking, their or their heating, or cooking or heating, and then a few more on propane for their fireplaces and stuff. But it's a big number, which I had no idea. And then so we would be able to do a report card that said in 2000 there were this many, and then when we could do some report card things that were very specific. But we'll have data. I think Brian, you have data on cars, right? Like Forest Park, specific data on some of those.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry, I think we're getting some data on that. It's not something that's hard, easy to find. We're getting better progress on housing and how much carbon each house might use, but that's about it.
So anyway, I think those are the kinds of specifics that we'll be able to do demonstrations on and get feedback on once we're doing implementation. We had said we were going to, so we're doing outreach to the local nonprofits and special interest groups, mostly through the survey, and we're not going out and speaking, which we probably could if something we'll say to them, but soon we should take a run. And then we said we'd get a plan to the council in March. So that is really where I wanted to begin to talk about whether my sense is that we should begin to write this document and then fill it in as we can. I'm going to share screen now. You want to share screen to continue? Okay. Share screen. This is what this will stop sharing other people's screen. Here's what that says. Yeah, I just saw it. Okay. This is what we did with for all of the whoops. No, there's no time you feel more inept than when you're trying to present something on Zoom.
It's not you.
It's all right.
It's not. It's what you're supposed to do. It's not you.
This is really cool.
So
Thanks for doing this.
Well, this is a start, and then Jessica was going to take a next step, a next run at the specifics of it. I've lost Lake Forest Park here, but this was I want to go over.
I want you to go over.
Okay, saving automatically. Okay. How come I can't get my other columns?
Can you put your cursor on a box and then use the arrow? No.
Let's go this way. Oh,
There, yay.
Okay.
Cheater way.
So what we said, so the colors are the common elements in each of the programs. So there's the pink one, for example, is why we need a climate plan. And people have it in different places in the study, but almost everybody has why we need a climate plan. And then there's a section on baseline analysis that shows up in various places. There's it seems to me then there's a section on the wedge diagram and how you use it. That's the one that says, we all know that wedge diagram. I think that's a confusing diagram the first time you see it. And it's the one that says, it has it's on a timeline, and it says the county and the state and the national will take care of this much emissions, and these are ours in order to get to the reductions that we've talked about. So because it's a common tool and used in every study, we probably will need to at least explain it to people. And then the issues around buildings and transportation as sources, natural environment, and solid waste. Those are other issues. The solid waste, although it's a very small piece of the emissions that happen locally, it's in everybody's control. So it has some, real, encouraging people to recycle more, compost more, and do all that sort of stuff. And then the implementation plan, that was the hardest part. What we've done with community engagement and how we build local resiliency, how we focus. Then there's one on referring municipal operations, and then we stick everything that we can't think of in the appendices. The survey, the King County report, the 2007 action plan. So what Jessica was going to do was lay this out, and I don't know where she is, and I will call her tomorrow and get some more specifics. Where she was going to lay out a more detailed table of contents.
So where did the items in the Lake Forest Park column come from?
My brain.
Your brain.
I just said,
Guys,
everybody has one of these. We should have one of them.
Ask you something?
Yep.
Are you done? Are you still, so there's buildings, transportation, natural environment, forest, and solid waste.
Yeah.
Are those all categories in your mind of emissions?
Yes.
So natural environment and forest, how are you thinking about that?
If you cut down trees.
Okay. The other thing to think about and help people understand is how they are sinks,
The pus.
that they are taking up, and there's this whole natural solutions thing, which Jessica could probably speak to, but the idea of how things naturally help the environment. So the positive parts, not just what we do that emits, but maybe try to emphasize some of the things that we do. That
And sorry to cut in, but we can actually get a kind of a clearer picture of that, because the what's the group called? Not the tree board. Yeah, I guess it's the tree board. They're getting another census. There was one done in 2010, I think, about what is the carbon sink for all the trees in Lake Forest Park, and they're getting another one, I think next year or soon, and that's something that we can definitely put into our report.
there's so
It
much
gives us a good hard number to work with.
for us that
Yes, this issue right down here, which is called building local resiliency,
Yeah.
maybe just
maybe that's where that
that goes in every
Yeah.
place. Maybe,
Yeah.
I think maybe that what we want to do is build resiliency. How do we develop and enhance our community around these issues?
That's where that could go.
Okay. So my question is, and I'll get back to Jessica, but is there something we're missing? Is there something that we should, again, what we were saying in the conversation before before the meeting, is that this report will be a little different from other ones because we're writing it as opposed to having consultants. So got to figure these things out.
Is the baseline analysis the CO2 emission? What is that? That's what that.
That would be the emissions from King County,
Oh, okay.
right? Is that right? All you data people? We'd have to figure out how to write that in a way that it was, comprehensible and.
Yeah.
You're
And we're working on that. That's Anne's got a really good database that she seems to be slowly piecing together as far as being able to be probably a little bit more accurate as far as what that carbon emissions really means.
Mhm.
So are we missing our goals? We have goals.
Does each topic have a goal? Like,
You'd have. What if we created a table, like just sort of a figure, a graphic that represent our goals so that people can understand it.
What we have, the council has committed itself to a reduction of 50% by 2030. Is that, I don't know what the numbers are, but they,
That's the overall, but in terms of, so you picked these, I don't know, key things that you said are gonna be, that we're gonna monitor, the data things that we can monitor, and so. If we tell people that those are our goal, you know, how do you plug in as an individual into this, and if you can say that we're gonna reduce.
Well, I think, yeah,
Gas,
it would be
gas
like
in your houses, or whatever it is.
each category, like reducing vehicle use by this much, or
Yeah,
gas in houses as much. Seems-
yes, that's the kind of thing I was saying, is that's our goal, that's the goals, right? Is to reduce these categories,
yes,
right?
yes.
But I was just looking forward out here.
But
in terms of
so
where that
those will
goes.
be kind of done section by section, it sounds
Okay.
like.
And is it just reducing carbon? We also have goals for like, community.
Yes.
Those.
And to kind of piggyback on that, I mean, it's far in the future, but our ultimate goal, right, should be zero carbon emissions. I mean, that we should state that. I think that should be in our statement. The ultimate goal is to have zero carbon emissions. I mean, otherwise, what are we doing? I mean, that's, at least that's my sort of opinion.
Okay.
Maybe that's our vision.
Vision.
Not net zero, but zero.
Yeah.
Well, that's gonna be different.
That's what I'm hearing from Brian, is zero, not net zero.
Yeah.
Which,
Net zero. Okay, right. Yes, please, just jump right in.
Okay, yeah, I'm just looking at my notes from our meeting with Kenmore. And I see, so something focus on joint commitments, which I guess would be kind of similar to synergies with other city plans. But it's, I mean, a little bit more than that, just kind of how we can partner together, right? Like if they're doing something where they're getting some kind of deal on someone installing solar panels, like we could get in on that too. So partnering, so
Other, what, with
municipalities or?
yeah, joint commitments, yeah. Synergy
Yeah.
with other cities, joint commitments. Partnerships.
Okay. Thank you, that's good.
And then something else that Kenmore said, is to build in easy wins. And I really think we should highlight that in our plan, just kind of what are some big easy wins that we could accomplish instead of just focusing so much on all these big picture things. What can give us the most bang for our buck, and highlight those.
Right, right. And I think we're gonna be, I absolutely agree with you, Tamara. I think the Inflation Reduction Act is gonna give us a boost on some of those. I think that there'll be charging stations, for example, and we should take credit for them. And there'll be some things that are coming down the road because the cities.
We can have like tiered goals in each of the subjects of like, you know, the easy wins, the, 10-year wins or whatever.
So,
Yeah, I think that was something that Kenmore had stated, was that they're like the ones that will have the most impact, that are the easiest and cheapest for them to accomplish. So kind of trying to highlight those, right? Because there's some that they had said, okay, this is something that's really important for us to do, but it's going to cost so much money for them to do it that it's just not very practical. Whereas there's something else that maybe might not have quite as much of an impact, but still has a big impact, but is significantly cheaper for them to do.
I think that's right. And I came across the King County Toolkit, which they did before they did this emissions thing. And they have a spreadsheet, which is kind of overwhelming, but it does say where you could get, where they thought you get the biggest bang for your buck. And we should really look at that. Maybe somebody could take it apart and actually figure it out.
where was it?
I'm gonna send it to you.
Yeah.
It's called the King County
I was
Toolkit.
looking at the toolkit, but like,
And then,
Like
and there's an
for-
Excel spreadsheet, and in the Excel spreadsheet, it has a lot of different things.
it's like cost effectiveness ratios.
I think so. It was hard, I get kind of overwhelmed by all that data on one sheet. And, but I think what they were doing is they rated them on a scale of 1 to 5. And they brought in, and they said, these, if you had only 10 things to do in the community and 10 things to do in your municipality, these would be the ones they suggested. Now, some of them won't work for us because we don't have a transportation system. So, but something like that.
Take the ones that do it.
Yeah, yeah, so I'm gonna,
Is like water quality included like in natural environment or?
we don't want to deal with you.
Oh,
I really want to just to deal.
Do we have environmental justice on here anywhere?
You mean temperature of streams?
Yeah.
And stuff like that, or
generally,
the lake?
I don't,
We don't want to take on the shoreline master plan issues.
no, I didn't know if you wanted it. in there.
I need to.
We'll support the efforts of others,
That's right.
Yeah.
improving water quality.
Yeah, exactly. There's our goal. Send that.
Hey, guys, I like Tamara's suggestion. I don't know if you guys heard her, but we definitely need a climate justice part to our program. Strategizing about how, especially those people who, are impoverished or have less capable means that they can still, be mitigated during climate actions or climate changes. I think, is that what you meant, Tamara? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut into you, but
Exactly. Oh, thank you, Brian. Yeah, that was something that Ken Moore mentioned as well, how to make sure that people who need subsidies, rebates, free or reduced products the most are the ones who are receiving them.
Mm.
But yeah, climate justice in general.
I think that's a really important issue for us. It's hard for me to get my head around some of those things. So those of you who've been thinking about that, I know the subsidies is one. Are there other places where the issues of environmental justice are top of mind for folks?
I see it being part of the local resilience, like. When I think about it, I think like, okay, the first big division is cutting greenhouse gas emissions and then like mitigating the harms of climate change that are gonna happen anyway. And then I see environmental justice being part of that second part where it's, because yeah, the subsidies, like in the IRA, like a lot of those subsidies and stuff are already income adjusted. But where I think that we can, make a difference in the plan is like, are we looking at, like the land use, the things that are, I don't know, I'm losing my. I see it being biggest in the, like, how are we helping people be resilient to climate change, making sure that it's not something that is affecting the lower income people the most.
yeah, I mean, that could be simple, Matt. That could be like having free trees available for, and tell them about how this is going to shade your house during when it gets really hot out, or this is, going to, help, with your energy bills or something. There's a lot of things that I think you could do that we could specifically target those people that are on low income.
We might want to identify more than just low income too, because there's also like older people are going to be affected more.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe making a community database of who these people are, or, how we can help. We might have to figure out these different groups of affected people. And
And
the
these are-
ways that they're
These
affected.
are also people more vulnerable to extreme events. So when we have the wildfires, we have, they need to be taken care of.
Right. And they may, yeah, they're not gonna be able to take care of themselves as well, and they also are more vulnerable to the effects.
But they don't have air
Exactly.
conditioning, they won't have, you know, a way
Right.
to fight.
So part of the local resiliency could be like, you know, when there are heat waves, this is what we are proposing to do to help people get through them. Targeting towards.
There was a really fun article or video, I can't remember, I saw about how schools were building little cheap filters, you know, during the smoke, and they, you know, for old people or for, you know, people who just couldn't afford, you know, filters or air conditioners, to put them in the windows. So just, you know, then we could have programs like that. It would be fantastic to get, you know, not just, you know, kids involved, but also, you know, schools and environmental clubs and so forth. That would be worth looking into.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be really cool if everything we did, like every part of this plan, you know, we also looked at it through that environmental justice lens. So everything we do, how can we bring in the environmental justice piece into everything we do?
Right, how do we be more inclusive about it, getting people of all different types to participate in all these other things too? Carbon or anything, it doesn't have to be just mitigation, but inclusiveness.
Mhm.
Yes, it's a very bizarre time. So you know, I'm old enough, well, obviously, old enough to get an Orca card that costs $1. And I'm thinking, I could pay the whole fare. Where's the single mom who needs this?
I know.
I mean, there's some weird things that we do in the country, so.
Mhm.
Anyway, all right, what else? This has been very helpful. This is kind of a fruitful, this is the way, let me just say, this is how I'm thinking is that we'll take this brainstorm and then I'll talk to Jessica and see if we can set up another sort of committee that is a little more fulsome about pulling this outline together, and then we're going to assign people to write cool parts of it and see what we have.
Mhm.
And I'm going to need a lesson on Google Docs because, geez,
We can help. you.
okay.
You know how to use Word, you can use Google
No,
Docs.
I
It's just
know.
getting your mind wrapped around how things.
Okay, seminar for a Google Doc, because I think that's a place where we can do this. Yeah, write it up. Okay.
I got a couple more. So another one would be like using our lobbyists to get more money for cities to help fight climate change. That was something else that the city of Kenmore mentioned, is lobbying. I mean, can we make that part of our plan?
Lobby,
Get all the PTA moms to go
lobby to like.
State legislature.
Yeah, lobbying state and federal level.
I think that's absolutely right, and part of it is we want to influence the city's legislative plan. Do they have one, Corey? Probably. Would you see if you've been friended first? Yeah, okay, because I was talking to somebody today who said, you know, how are we ever going to get 75% people off gas if the electricity goes out, and the only way they can keep warm is,
Yep.
you know, so we want to say, well, you want to underground all the electrical. I mean, that wouldn't solve all the problems, but it would solve
Yeah.
some. You were all under.
Underground electric would be so nice.
Yeah, and it would be attractive too, and we could grow more trees, right?
Mhm.
But that, I think that is a policy that may require state legislative money.
Mhm.
And we do have two, we have, I only know two of them, but there are three state legislators who are environmentalists, who we can, I mean, they're new to us in Lake Forest Park. So that's good news for us. But we should-
And then the last one is like involving the tribes, bringing the tribes, the local tribes into it and getting their input. As much as they would like to participate.
Yeah, I think having a land acknowledgement is probably a good piece of what I'll include in.
A little bit. I think those land acknowledgements are a little tricky too.
And it's related to that. I attended the Tribes and Climate Change Conference, Brian, that you suggested. It was awesome. So I will kind of prepare some cliff notes and I'll send those to you, Corey, and then you can send them out. So thanks again, Brian.
Okay, so. Does that make sense in terms of moving ahead with the writing part? So, well, what, who else? Who else isn't here? We'll make them in charge. Jessica, Bella, and they're all in charge, right? They're on the committee.
So you had a date for a final version being March, the final version,
No, the version we bring to the council and they'll do whatever they want to.
but that's our final version, right? That seems
Ambitious.
it seems like it to me, but I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think they, no council member has said, how you doing even. So.
Well, Tracy.
Yeah, he was gonna call in from Japan, but
Oh, is that where he is?
yeah, he's in Japan. So, I don't mean, and I do.
You're not gonna be held to a timeline by any means, like
Right.
this is like good work, it's like.
Come on, Dana, think of it like a final exam that you got to write. The more it's in the future, the more you just keep putting it off. So you gotta shove it up there and make it a priority.
Yeah, but we could break it down a little bit, so maybe we have a first draft, because I don't think the first draft is on that.
No.
So maybe we need a deadline for a first draft
March.
that we can then circulate ourselves and really focus on honing.
Well, do you think we could have a first draft by March?
That I think.
Oh, okay, well, there we are. Easy.
That
I'm writing this
final
down.
is
First draft.
scary,
Final draft will be next day.
second, and that's where you come in.
But then we could, we could at least report to the council that we have a first draft and we're
Yeah.
working on it and everything.
And maybe we send that first draft out to more external readers or something, so it's not just us, like. Sure, being through whatever it is, but.
But I
So-
do, and Tamara, I think we need to go to the council with a response to our, to the survey.
Mhm.
Sort of the big picture. I think that in order, so when do you? We're gonna close it on the 31st, right, of December,
December.
Yep.
and I think the hard part is all those comments, they're just a rich mine, but it's a lot of work. Do you have any?
Yeah, I was thinking some of the people who wanted to volunteer with us. I mean, maybe we can recruit some of them to kind of piece together those comments and collate them in some way that we could
There must be
report out.
Common
Wow.
things amongst
Yeah.
them, so group them into common things and then sort of summarize them in categories or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes, and I think, Tamara, if you wanted to get us together, a small group to do exactly that, look at, or somebody take question 12 and say, what are look at the common
How many questions were open-ended?
resilient.
So,
Well, we could do like finding, like, okay, search through all of them, how many mention this word?
yeah,
And we can all just sit down and be like, okay, everybody start throwing words at the wall. And we'll see, okay, 100 of them mention this word, obviously, that's like. I don't know, that could be one way to try to collate it.
Okay, did you understand that? Because that'd be good. I don't know how you do that. Word search?
Control F.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
yeah, maybe we could make like a hard copy even, and then just have multiple copies of each answer and stick them up on together.
Okay, so maybe after. No, when is our next meeting? You won't be ready in our next meeting.
No, the next meeting is January 3rd. And the next meeting is when we also have the Shoreline School District will be there. Talk about how we can partner together.
Yeah.
They're developing their climate action plan.
Okay, so this is helpful for us because it's a work session, but you, so can you, Tamara, figure out for us how we can help you get that information in a format that we can deliver to the council and to ourselves and to the council? And I say that because the council is important because we've got to bring them along with us. They're our audience really for this report. So times that we can go ahead and do that. Can you get a plan for us for the next meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I think I like the idea of kind of having each person sort of tackle a question, and then they can kind of report back on those findings, kind of find some way to summarize it.
Yeah.
And I'll see what we can work with, like inside Survey Monkey too, like I haven't played around with what we can use.
Oh, yeah, that might be cool.
Yeah, so.
Mhm. Okay, cool. Yeah, let me know what you find out too, Corey.
Yeah, and we could get together with Corey here and look at the stuff if you wanted to do that too, like whatever those diagnostics.
Okay, yeah, I'll take a look at how many questions we have that are the open-ended and just kind of look at all the different responses and what I think would be the most time-consuming pieces.
Now, in order to add to her work, I think we should say to ourselves, who haven't we reached with this survey, the survey that's gone out? And we have gotten a lot of play in a lot of different places. But I was talking to the director of this play, and I'd asked her 3 times to do if she had done it. She said, oh yeah, she was going to get to it. And then I emailed it to her, and then she answered it. But it's not that people don't want to fill it out. I think we just have to do it more than once.
Yeah, I just saw like the guy who's leading the work parties at Grace Cole, he just sent it out to his.
Yeah, I send it to him.
Yeah, so, you know, it's still getting spreading.
Percolate.
Yeah, it's still spreading.
Right. So one of the things, I put it in Nextdoor today. If you skip Nextdoor,
I went to look, it didn't need to be promoted yet.
oh, okay.
No, it was there, and then Tamara
Tamara
had
wrote
done
something.
something, and so
Well,
it's
if
still at the top of whatever.
All you have to do is like it, put a little heart by it or something.
I'm kind of waiting until it like goes down, and then I'll think it.
And I don't know if you can do that with Shoreline, but we'll write a couple more. I think we'll do it more than one more time for Shoreline Area News and one more time for Nextdoor. Are there other, what are the, so
The newsletter will be sent out, the paper newsletter will be sent out soon.
It's in there again.
Yeah.
I'll prod the Stewardship Foundation to send it out to their mailing list as well.
it was in the newsletter last week.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. How about the water district? They have a newsletter and, I mean, it's not the whole.
Great.
And I can go, door to door in my neighborhood too. So we could use that awesome like Canva poster that you created, Sarah, and just make little flyers
Okay.
that we could hand out to go door to door. Just in our, immediate neighborhoods.
What's happened with Night Out? Did you get that list, Corey, email us?
I emailed the chief of asking him what groups he can send us out to. I haven't heard back.
So the Night Out and Crime Watch are, they're in all the neighborhoods, and Linda volunteered to go walking, so I thought if they don't email, we could try some of those lists.
Yeah,
Sure.
and-
Those are people who have lists in their neighborhood of Crime Watch.
And Sarah, what about the Rotary Club that supported our play today? Did they get the list?
Yes, I sent them the questionnaire when it first dropped. I can certainly put it in the newsletter there again.
How about the tree board?
Yep. I'm gonna find a list of. Again, because I'm inept at whatever that thing is, where we share documents. I had to make
The
one
Google Docs.
Google Docs. We do have another. I do have another. Stop sharing. Sharing with who?
Putting together a list of communication like this, I think is important just to have anyway, if we're to communicate out. Maybe we'll have another survey at one point, or whatever it is, we should have a list of who all these groups are.
I have it. I don't have all of it. I have some. Let's see.
That could be part of the climate action plan, even, like.
Okay. So this is.
I have it up. I can share my screen.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, and I'll tell you which ones I added to it.
Okay.
I found mine too, so. I did go to all the apartments and try to get.
Oh, you did? Awesome.
Some of them just want me to get an apartment.
Which ones did you go to? I can mark them off now.
I went to Woodlands and Sheridan Beach and Watercrest.
Okay. Cool.
Um,
Brian, did you reach out to the stewardship station?
Yep.
Okay. And then I'm not sure if Anne reached out to LFP people for climate action. And then we have the
Yes.
Civic Club,
Not yet.
Okay, so
Um,
very important one. Did I have you?
Presbyterian Church.
I have a Facebook page and stuff like that, so I don't know.
Don't they have like a holiday party
They-
coming up? Because can you?
They do a Christmas ships thing, but it's all outside. It's not really organized yet.
Are you a member of the club?
Yeah, yeah.
Can you?
Yeah,
get
I
that?
meant, I intended to.
Okay, that's all this is, it's just, okay.
And Sherry's working on, she sent it to the president. There's some newsletter at the Presbyterian Church, so she was helping me,
Great,
because she's a member there. I'm not.
okay.
Across the street.
We have Minari Church, the LFP newsletter, they'll go in December. A couple of other apartments. Oh, Sheridan Heights, is that like the board?
It's an apartment building.
Oh, okay.
And they did actually send it out. Not only did I contact them, I know they sent it out.
Okay.
Anne was gonna do the Democratic PCO, but Democratic members. I couldn't find the Republican PCOs. I'm sure they're public. Well, I'm gonna put that on the list.
What is PCOs?
Precinct committee officers. They know their neighborhood. They might have most of the neighborhood.
What about the city's Facebook page?
It's been on there.
Who has access to, do you have access to that, Corey? Can you post on there?
Yeah, it's been on it.
Oh, it has? Okay, cool.
I'll do another post for it by the end of the year.
Thank you.
Okay, and I added to it, the playlist, for people who are on this play with us. We're looking for the Night Out Against Crime and the Crime Watch people. We're trying to get those from the chief.
And you did next door, is that on?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, I crossed that out for you today.
Does anybody have any contact with the Illinois Church? Oh, you know where it is. It's where the old city hall was, up on top of. About 230.
Oh. I know where are you talking about up near Horizon View Park?
Yeah.
Oh, what is the name of that church again?
Oh, Nuri. I'll
Hmm,
go talk to them. Okay, I'll take that on.
Okay,
I think that the question though is that we need to sort of reduce some of these things. So if you come to a lot of people. Does your neighborhood Matt have a newsletter?
Well, I Sheridan Beach. I see somebody already.
Okay,
So there's 182nd Street email list.
who's the owner of it?
It's just a list.
Can you send out? Oh, okay. So 182nd Street, and there's another group, the old ladies of the pool. Sent it out to everybody in the group. I'll find out what their neighborhood is. But this is a great list, I have to say, and the contacts, I think, because we can But we can use it again and again.
Yeah.
If we can get the email lists that are associated with it or that kind of stuff.
Is the PTA?
Yep. Yeah, I reached out to the PTAs. I haven't heard back yet, but I just did it last week. So I reached out to Brookside, LFP Elementary, and Kellogg.
Great. Okay, so what I'm hearing on this one is we'll talk to Anne about the political ones that she's in contact with. That we'll do, maybe he's gonna do the civic club and check on the Presbyterians, right?
I talked to Sherry. the
They're
other
done,
day.
okay, so Presbyterians are done. I'll check with the Onori and you're gonna, Dana's gonna do the 82nd.
Do you have a template thing that you send?
Yes, I'll send it to you. I'll put it to the list.
What should I call it? 82nd Neighborhood Association?
Well, it's 182nd
82nd.
street email list. It's just.
It's just their party, they have a party, you know. Close the street off, play music.
Garden.
Oh, the garden club's done, yes, is the garden club on there? The garden club and the garden tour, both are.
Yep.
Should be on it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they're up here.
If you're a part of an organization, then, and I'll send out to everybody the press release again. So you can just, and feel free to make it shorter or better.
Okay,
Okay.
third place books. Have a. They have a web poster. up there. Yeah, with a poster. But they also have.
They have an email list. I don't know that they've ever done anything, but maybe I'll talk to Robert. In general, friend, Cinderella.
And the farmers market list. Isn't there?
The farmers market list is the third place commons. I don't, and they were a little reluctant to send it out because it's so much more than like Forest Park.
Oh, they're listed.
Yeah.
I think posting that at the library downstairs or over there
Anywhere.
would be
It's just
good
Yeah.
if they put it up. It seems like that's a place where people kind of hang out for, and spend some time, so they might actually fill it out while they were there.
Okay. I have 10 of these and we can make more to put them up. They only have a lifetime of a month, so we get them out and put them up. Okay, that was my next thing. The next thing on my list is to take over Corey's Green Fair and do whatever we want.
Have our way with it. What's your green? What is the green fair?
She does a green, there's a,
Crazy.
what?
Oh, the city. Green Fair.
City's Green Fair.
Are they doing this?
And what they have done in the past is they have booths, they have a big table and they clear it off and people walk around. And we're thinking maybe we could, there's a section in Third Place Commons that the Third Place Books uses for accounting. And in the back down there, we used to be the community college, and there are big spaces that we could put up. We could have seminars, and you could have 35. That's a big room. You could have 50 people in it. So we could do a variety of things like that. That moved our agenda. So we could have Brian do what are greenhouse gases?
You dress up like molecules?
Yeah, something like that. Drop them out for nine.
You did a little thing. But Brian gave a talk. Yeah, you could do your street talk. That's really good.
Yeah. And I've run into people, again, the conversations about gas are fascinating to me because I have an all electric house. But people who have gas stoves are like, they're a part of a cult. And they, you can't really cook unless you have gas that you control. So I was thinking, if we could get an induction chef? So I'm looking for a chef who could bring up, I've seen these two, like a pot, portable induction, but we want somebody who's really a good cook. And apparently all of them.
And a show.
And a show, exactly, exactly. So it's to show that it works and that it's not, and that you're not hot. Apparently, one of the good things is you're not hot. The chefs like it because the kitchen's not hot. I never even heard of it. Induction.
Yeah.
See, you can come to the seminar. Do you have a gas stove?
Yeah.
See, what's the alternative?
Yeah, we're trying to upgrade.
For you?
Well, we will soon, but
Yeah.
I'm not,
Well, not a chef?
not a chef.
But maybe, you know, Albert Lee Appliance would bring an appliance, I don't know. Anyway, so that kind of thing, and the question is, does that seem like something that we would like to, it's just one more hard thing to do in a short period of time, because it's probably gonna be by April,
So why does it have to be in a short period?
because we wanna roll with.
Well, yeah, so we could get like a monthly seminar thing that would include something like that or whatever.
Well,
Or you want it more than
one day.
Monday. What?
I just think one day.
Everything in one day, what?
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 Oh, you're gonna fair.
A fair, yep, taking over the Green Fair,
Like 10 to 2.
10 to 2, so you
You
have
mean there would be no other people at the green or no other
It'd
booths?
still be.
booths. But
You
you'd
also
also
be
have
one booth in the whole green.
You'd have booths and then like workshops
Workshops.
throughout the day.
And it would all be our stuff. Like
Well,
usually it's like
no, no, no.
different organizations.
No, we let some also,
Oh,
but we would run the workshops, I think, is what we would organize them and run, not run them, but organize them. Or we would actually, we just tell Corey what we wanted her to do, and she would make it all happen.
I don't know about finding a chef.
good.
Yeah, we got to that, we need a chef out there.
I'm confused about the core concepts. So the Green Fair takes place where, and how does this have to do with the seminar room where the place does its accounting?
All right, I'm sorry, I went too fast. For the last, I'm taking 2 years step backwards. 2 years ago, we started something called the Lake Forest Park Town Hall on Environment. And we did 2 of them. We did one 2 years ago, and we did one last year. And it was an event all online where we did presentations, and then we had workshops, and people broke up into workshops in their various rooms. Brian did a presentation on something. I'm sure it was good. Brian,
It was
remind me
highly
what it was.
memorable anyway.
Yeah,
We didn't dress up, that's.
it didn't just, right. And
A bar presentation.
And then so last year we focused on how do you be hopeful in the context of the environment. So we had the bicycle people and from, amped up people made a presentation, and the book people made a presentation, although Dana ended up doing it because the book people broke her ankle on the way to the seminar.
Didn't
But-
bring mine.
No.
She broke.
So that's our history. I mean, a number of us were involved in that. So I'm trying to take that notion of doing a town hall and doing it as part of what we would do as a public education on the issues around. the
But
world.
why do you take over
Is
the
this the same
green
as the
fair?
green-
Why don't you do the green fair separately?
It's the same, like you just have booths, people walk around the booths and then go to workshops throughout the day, like.
But we could have that as in addition to the green fair. It seems like a lot to add to the green fair, which is already a pretty big thing, right? If I'm thinking of the same thing that we haven't had for a couple of years, right?
The advantage is that there's already people that will come.
Right. Yeah.
And realistically, you're probably gonna get like a 10:30. You're probably gonna get like 4 big workshops. And then you have like little breaks. And people aren't gonna sit there all day, but then they'll choose to go to 1 or 2, then go to the booths and then.
So if it's just workshops.
Well, I mean, one workshop would be cooking with induction.
We should probably use the survey results to figure out kind of what some of the other topics.
Perfect.
One of the topics should be based on what people, the feedback,
And there are people outside of our group who would help with the screen pickup. It doesn't just have to be us. But I think it's an opportunity. Also, our booth, we could actually have a booth that did the survey results, put up the key
Yeah.
findings of the survey results.
We point
And-
that to the workshop.
Yeah, and gave us an opportunity to talk to people. So. People are kind of,
That was some other feedback that we received from Ken Moore. Is just, get out to the community as much as possible. We can't do too much outreach.
and Corey has money, just saying.
$5. Excellent.
So she has some money
For the Great Fair.
for the green, for the green. Fair. So
Oh,
it-
nice.
So if we found a chef who said, yeah, I'll do it, but I want $250 to come in and do it, that becomes possible.
When I get more time to like, get into the Great Fair, I'll come back and ask you guys, like, what are some good giveaways that. Or ideas to inspire people to go home with and stuff like that too. So think about like stuff like that in the meantime. And that's it.
So I missed the date of when the Green Fair is.
I haven't said it yet. So
Is it like spring?
March, April.
Let's do April, since March is our deadline for this other thing.
And April is Earth Day.
Yeah, but you wanna,
Avoid actual Earth Day, right?
Yeah.
It's too many
I
things
don't,
happen
yeah,
on Earth.
I don't.
there's a lot.
We could also do it in May. I mean,
Yeah, I actually kind of like that idea of May, but
that would give us a little bit more.
I like
breathing.
that.
We can make seed bombs again.
I'm gonna see if mine grows. I planted mine. Well, I know by May if my seed bomb is grown. All right, let's see what else I have on. what else?
Oh, do we want to talk about the missions presentation at Third Place Commons? Do we have a date for that yet?
No. No, the question is, what do we want to do there? I think we need to get smarter.
I think maybe look at the survey and then see where you guys want to go. If this outside of the Great Fair, if there's like another thing that needs to be honed in on.
Right. Right. And there's a group called, that we've come in contact with before, called Cultura, and their mission, they have a local branch, and their mission is to get people out of gasoline cars. They have a number of strategies. And they're the heat pump people, and
I want to understand heat pumps better.
Yeah.
we got a guy, right?
Got a guy?
Yeah, we got a guy. But he might cost some money. So,
So he has to come to the fair.
yeah. I think that's a kind of right there.
That'd be great to get a heat pump guy or gal at the fair.
Yeah. Yes, well, you could see that there might be a booth where somebody who's selling heat pumps shows you what they are, and then somebody who talks about what a heat pump does. Okay, but it sounds to me, am I correct in saying that we're interested in this?
In the Great.
We should
Yeah.
be, we should be.
Okay, and we are thinking May is a better date. Okay, was that? Oh, I didn't know if there were reports from various groups. I just zoomed over that. Because Jessica wasn't here. Tamara, do you have something that you wanted to report?
No, unfortunately, I could not get it together this last month. So we did not meet. But I just sent out an email with a when to meet poll so that we can get together this month prior to our January meeting.
Yeah. And Brian, did you have something from your group?
The only thing I would say is we're starting to get a little bit more categorized in how we're looking at the data. So because Anne's got all the stuff on her sort of database on her computer, she's kind of working with the more hard numbers of contacting companies, whereas I think Dana and I are going to work more on sort of looking at data as more of a, hey, here's what a typical household that's on a gas furnace would produce in a year. Here's what the savings would be on carbon emissions if you went to a heat pump or cars and things like that. So we can then at least have something to present like if we did a green fair thing, it would be something that we could have visuals that could show those kinds of cost savings. So that's something that she and I will kind of work on. I guess we'll talk more about that, Dana, in the coming weeks.
Okay. Let's see.
Is there an email list that came up as a result of the survey? Like volunteers that, do people put their emails on there?
Kind of.
Is there a way to grow a community email list like that through a survey and then maybe have a regular
Well, we have
email?
the Notify Me group, has like over 100 and something people now that you guys can send articles out,
Oh, good.
you know.
Yes, and that's a sweet list. I mean, those are people who actually went to all that trouble. And on this poster, you can, one of these gets you to the survey and the other gets you to the notifying list.
Oh, good.
But there is a question, this is an intriguing question, and it is, we've got some people who said they wanted to volunteer with us. So now what?
That's the people Tamara's gonna use to like work on our survey results.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the best, but
But maybe the Green Fair, we might have to work on the Green
Mhm.
Fair.
Or maybe they could put together a like. Maybe.
a skit. No.
Yes, or like a seminar.
I mean, Linda had offered to reach out to the people who had said on the survey that they would be interested in volunteering, just to let them know, like, hey, thank you for your interest. We're kind of working on it. So I think that's a good idea. And we can also ask them just kind of what areas they would like to volunteer in, what they would like to do, just kind of gauge their interest.
And, and maybe we invite them to a Zoom meeting and tell them what we're doing. Because if they're interested enough, they'll be our ambassadors. And we can say, we're struggling with this and we're doing this and this, but we just bring them up to date. Does that?
How many are there?
Yeah, like a volunteer outreach meeting.
Yeah, and then we could tell them about, we want them to help you with this. And then we could say, here's some opportunities, doing the Green Fair, doing the analysis of this kinds of stuff and see what we got. I mean, maybe there's somebody who has an extraordinary talent that we don't know anything about. So I don't want to lose those people who have said they're interested. Yeah.
Right.
How many are there?
I don't know. I'd have to look.
50 or like 10 or 1?
I think you said 15. 50.
So are we thinking about a separate meeting other than our monthly meeting as a sort of a volunteer roundtable, or is it the same meeting?
I think we could probably just invite them to one of our meetings.
Sure.
Just like the first part of the meeting, we can kind of have our volunteer outreach, then they could either stay on if they want or drop off.
What about the January meeting?
January meeting, we're having a guest.
Now we have
Oh.
the Shoreline School District. So maybe in our February meeting.
That
we
would
can
give
do that.
think up topics too, or ways that
Okay,
we could suggest
so
that they get it.
So we're talking about February meeting, the advisory committee input, and we could start it early and have them, so people didn't have to come. I mean, you're all of course invited to, but we could have peace where we invited all those folks and then begin our official meeting. And encourage them to stay if they want to, but don't feel badly about
Yeah, like pre-meet.
it. Yeah. Does that make sense? Okay, the last question I had for today was, what is it right now in the next month that we think we should be doing outreach to folks on in our, what should we, is the printed newsletter done?
Yeah, we have an e-news that'll go out at the end of December.
Okay, so an e-news, are there articles that we should write? Should we send things? What right now is it that we need to tell people about?
At the end of December, you said?
Perfect.
So this brings back to, because you were talking about how, who are we not reaching?
Yeah.
And then you immediately gave an example of somebody who we reached, who
Yeah.
just was putting it off.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so is our goal to reach new people, or is it to get people? Because like, if we want to get people who already know about it, who've been putting it off, then we want to send an email like a week before the end of the year and say, you only have a week left to do this.
Okay,
Sure, that's great.
So if there's a e-news at the end of the month, then it would be good to put something in there that says like, you have 5 days left to fill this out if you forgot.
otherwise we're going ahead without you.
The
Yeah.
publication date will be the 21st.
Okay, you have
Okay.
10
I need-
days.
I need articles by the 13th.
So in addition to sign up for the survey, are there anything else we should be sort of? How many people get this email?
I think,
Okay, I don't, I guess.
Does it get posted to the website?
yeah, it's
What?
posted on social media and next door.
It goes to next door?
But I guess it's to the city's website. Or the news, you could read all the archive.
Yeah.
So anything else? I mean, we talked, Brian came up with the idea of talking about going shopping locally, reducing your emissions.
But we did that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I'm just giving you an example. Well, if you think of something, send me an email, I'll draft it up and Dana will fix it. That's how we've been working so far. But they're sort of two part. So, and the other thing is use your own social networks to talk this up, I think.
What about like highlighting what happened at COP?
Right?
What
What,
happened?
or they set up that fund.
Mhm. Yeah,
The big.
Did you have something, Tamara, from the tribes and climate that you wanted to write up?
I'm not sure if I have enough that would for a newsletter.
All right, well, it's just, I just wanted to, you know,
What about something on like food waste and composting and getting your holiday tree and composter?
oh yeah, wrapping paper,
Just,
Roshki's.
I'll probably have a recycling article from Republic on holiday stuff, hopefully. But I'm thinking more like, you know, we're going more into the winter weather, composting and
I don't know what winter, how is winter weather composting different from
summer
summer
branches and stuff.
branches? Oh, yeah, you gonna set up a special recycling place? I don't know.
Dump it in the parking lot out here.
Yeah, you gonna do that?
Just chop it up in your bin.
I have to say, I am doing that with a plum tree that came down. Uh, We let it get too big, and it just toppled over.
You kind of see these trees like leaning over.
Oh, yes, yes. Yeah. Okay, anything else that people, I apologize for this meeting, which was kind of disorganized, but I feel like we made a little bit of progress on figuring out how to proceed with the writing during the goals and kind of stuff, the green fair and
Oh, and their LFP in Action Book Club.
oh, that's right. That was on my list. Let's have a report.
You could do that for a. It's not really much to report.
Oh, we met, we
And
had
had a fun
like
time.
7 of us there. One person that we didn't know before, but there's a couple people who had reached out, but it was on a power outage day. Bad time. And I don't know.
Is
seems like
that
it went
something
all right?
write an article for the?
I don't
article
think
about?
we could put that in the e-news, but we could do that on the notify me, like saying the LP book club is meeting this time at this.
Yeah, we have the next meeting set up, it's the day after our, like January 3rd or something, whatever the day after, it's the Wednesday after this meeting.
January.
There are no books left in the section. We have to get them to
I
put more
know.
books there.
Are there books behind? So I've asked and can't find any in the whole books.
I told them that there would probably be a demand. Because it would be up there for a while,
Yeah.
right? A lot of book clubs like have their book for a month and then it's the next month.
Yeah.
So she didn't believe me, I guess.
Yeah.
I wonder if they have them at the library. I mean, I could buy some books and then donate them to the library. So that it's not a barrier of entry for people who want to join us.
Yeah. Well, they can, there's other places they can get the book, right? Online.
It's just 20% off at the bookstore. It supports local business. It's
Yeah.
just sort of that.
Yeah.
Oh,
The library video is really.
I didn't. The library, somebody was borrowing it.
They have a digital version. I have the digital.
You know,
version. So,
Tamara, the friends of the library will buy the book for you.
Yeah.
And if you say, we're doing a book club and we want it, and we'd like 10 copies, the friends of the library collect money and
KCLS will buy it for you.
If you just
You
tell
just-
the case,
They have
way
a
we've done it.
thing on their site, which you can ask for 20 books to be ordered, but I'm sure they have it already.
but sometimes if they have, you know, there's a Lake Forest Park reads, the Friends of the Library buy 20 copies and then they're all over the local library.
Is Friends of the Library, do they have a email list?
It's on this page, Friends of the Library, yeah.
So we're using a format, there's an online,
Book club.
it's not a book, it's called Circles, and it's a way of fostering conversation around the topics that the book is addressing. And so it's a structured way of going through it, and so the grad student who is part of this is very gung-ho about that, and so she was good at bringing in these conversational strategies. And I think it worked well. I mean, the popcorning thing, it was like, okay, cool, great, I'm glad. So she had an idea beforehand, and I was glad she stepped in, because I was like, I really don't want to be checked. So that was good to have
Yeah.
her. So take that.
And these are people we met at the farmer's market.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these are, so if you count her name was Sarah and her. I guess
They're married.
The husband was
Yeah.
Michael and Mark, my husband came and somebody we never knew, somebody we never heard of before showed up, so.
And there's
That's
3 other
Patricia.
people on the email list now. Yes, Patricia, and then a friend of mine who was there, so I told her about it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
2 other people who had emailed, but didn't actually make it, so.
And you don't need to have been to the last one to come to the next one.
No, yeah.
Okay. Let's see. And is there anything else for the good of the order? What have we missed something? Hey,
Let's go swim upstream.
yeah, let's go spawn. Thank you all for coming. All right.
Bye.